In this video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to play all the spots on CT Vertigo. Before I start, I just want to talk about all the positive comments I've been receiving. I read every single comment that I get, and I've just seen nothing but support and, overwhelming thanks and praise, so I'm just going to keep making these videos. And if this video gets 100 likes, I'm going to do Anubis CT next, so be sure to like the video. Vertigo is one of these maps where I see a lot of beginner and intermediate level players. They don't really even know where to go at the very start of the round. They don't understand why you play certain positions or why you put a certain number of people in certain positions. So that's going to be a lot of what I talk about in this video. And on Vertigo specifically, there's a lot that can go wrong from your initial plan on the CT side. The Ts can do a lot to counter everything that you want to do. So you just have to remember that this is a very dynamic map and you have to play in a lot of different ways in order to have an advantage on the CT side. So coming out of spawn, there's 5 positions that you need to think about. A main A player, there's a player who plays more towards side hall, there's a player who plays mostly elevator, the B rotator, and there's a player who plays as B anchor. So when the round balances out from the initial 10-15 seconds, you want to see this structure in your team. So 2 people towards A, 1 person holding mid, and then 2 people generally towards the B side area. So I'm going to talk about the elevator player first because it's very central to how the map plays. You're kind of the main rotator. Since the rotates are so small, you can go between both A and B very easily. So since you're the elevator player, you're not required to be at A site immediately. You're required to throw smokes for your A teammates, because when your A teammates are running here, they don't have time to stop and throw a smoke on the run. They're trying to come and play in this area, and they're trying to come play in this area. So you're responsible for throwing the nades for them. And so there's 2 smokes that I want you to learn. The first one, which I think is the most impactful smoke, is to smoke yellow. And the second smoke is to smoke ramp. So I'm going to show you both of those lineups right now. So I saw this in a tournament recently, and I think it's the easiest way to smoke yellow. You can't really miss the smoke if you throw it like this. So out of spawn, you're going to run into this corner, and I want you to look for this last thing here. I don't know, what is this? A cable? You're going to look for this cable routing hole. Okay, so you're going to aim at the bottom right here. You have to aim a little bit precisely, but since you're not, time pressured, this one's so easy, it's okay. You line up here at the bottom right, very bottom right. You run over to this area, and I want you to look at the grenade cam here. So I'm here on the wall. I'm going to scoot left and right. You see how forgiving this smoke is? You can just kind of run and put your back against the wall and let go. And this smoke is very good because it lands like this. And what this allows for your teammates to do is to come and play very aggressively on the ramp like this. And it's very hard for the Ts to come up and kill somebody in this angle because they're exposed to so many things. There could be people playing anywhere, right? So it's going to be hard for them to run up and try to kill your teammate playing here. And it gives a lot of cover from people playing in the back, right? They can't see this sight line at all. So this half of the ramp side that the Ts are going to be playing at, the information is cut off for them. So this smoke is super helpful for your teammates, and I think that it should be thrown on the majority of rounds when you're playing Vertigo. And then the other smoke to learn is to smoke ramp, and I'm going to show you a pretty easy lineup. So you just want to come into this wall right here. And you see this big light? This is what I'm looking at, and I'm looking for this line that runs straight through the middle of it. Aim right about here, and just hold your W key and let go. And it's going to bounce off of this beam and land right on the ramp. What is the main difference between these 2 smokes, right? They both block off information. So why would you choose one or the other? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's your teammates at A's choice on which one they want. You can ask them in the beginning of the round, do you want the yellow smoke or do you want the ramp smoke? And in beginner and intermediate level games, most people won't know the difference. So it's up to your best judgment to know which one your teammate is going to like the most. Okay, so one of the things that the yellow smoke is weak to is rushes. So if the other team likes to run up the ramp really fast, you get this vibe from the other team that they're playing super, super aggressive. This smoke isn't really going to do much because they can, at the end of the day, run through with a Mach 10 through the smoke, right? But you have to remember that there's other people just in the first person rushing. So if you throw the ramp smoke, right, and you're T, and you're the one who's kind of playing in the back, baiting, looking for kills, looking for trade kills, you're really gonna have a hard time getting trade kills over this smoke. It's very hard to trade somebody as a CT who's playing here on the ramp, right? It's hard for a T to spam you through the smoke. So if the other team likes to rush and hold W, you should throw the ramp smoke. And if the other team plays more passive and reserved, throw the yellow smoke, because it basically locks them out of coming ramp slow. So yeah, just remember that. Ramp smoke if the other team's rushing, yellow smoke if the other team is playing normal. In CSGO, you used to be able to really hear people through the floor, but in CS2, they changed the audio engine a lot, so you can't really hear people through the floor as well. So I wouldn't focus too heavily on it, but what you can hear is people running on the ramp. So even if your teammates don't call it out, you'll hear people running on the wooden ramp, and so you'll be able to react and go towards A. And if you don't hear anything, you can rotate towards mid, because likely what's happening is the round is much slower, and you want to counter lurk players who might be coming out mid, right? And so think about it. If you rotate to mid, it lets your B teammates have more freedom to play towards the B site, because now you're holding mid. Your B teammates don't have to hold mid super hard from Guardian here. Heaven is some people. Window. I call it Guardian. I'll call it Guardian in this video. Your Guardian player has more freedom to go towards B if it's B. Now let's say you are the elevator player and you kind of just autopilot and run towards A as the third player, even when it might not be an A rush at that moment. Now your mid teammate is forced to look at mid, right? Because he can't just not hold it. There could be a guy walking out, right? And killing him in the back if he's not holding it. So he has to look at this. Now, if something happens at B, there's a huge gap throughout mid. So just remember, as the elevator player, you're responsible for rotating effectively and holding mid if there's nothing A. Okay, so if you're playing A site, it means you're going to have a lot of the action in most of the rounds, especially early in the round. So you have to know how to counter early rushes and relay info on if the other team is coming A or not. So this goes for both A players, the side hall player and the main A rifler. You have to play with your teammate a lot. You have to know exactly what your A teammate wants to do, and you have to see if your A teammate gives up space in side hall, or if you're the side hall player, if this guy gives up space. Just always be aware of where your other teammate is, and if you're fighting alone, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so coming out of spawn here, a lot of the times I'll see beginners who don't really know the map, they'll run through heaven to go to A. This is wrong. It's much faster to run through elevator like this, even if you have the spawn that's right here. It might seem like heaven's faster, but it's not, because of this bend you have to go around here. You'll always get beaten by a teammate with a worse spawn who runs like this. So if you're the A player, you should always run through elevator, and if you're peeking, this is the fastest way to peek the ramp. Okay, so since Valve's latest update on this map about a month ago, I can't remember when it was, but they shifted the T spawns forward a ton. So the T's have a much better timing for their sake to rush you. Okay, so take that into consideration while I'm talking about this next part as the A player specifically. So when you run coming through this way, as the A player, if you want to get early aggressive info, you can hold the jump into yellow like this safely. As you can see, I'm not peeking down like this. I'm just holding the jump into yellow from here or from here. Because what will often happen is the T will like to rush up like this, and if they're focused on jumping here, right, they have their Mac 10 or whatever, they're not going to be it's really hard to, you know, hold this while jumping up, right? You kind of have to do some insane like S strafe. No one's going to do this, right? So you'll be able to get this guy, at least tag him or see him, right? And he won't be able to react to you if he pushes like this, and you can maybe even go for a wall bang and fall off. You know, that's the case that they're rushing. Some easy nades that you can throw to counter a rush are this beam while you're running. You come here and you throw it off the beam like this. And this is going to land at the top of the ramp, and it prevents T's from just running through like this without taking a ton of damage. So this is a good molly that you can throw, just simple like this. And for the tutorial, I have bloom disabled with a command, but this fire is really tall. If I turn the bloom back on, here, let me do that really quick. So even with the bloom on, you can still see over this Molotov, and it's very hard for the other team to process that you're here if you're peeking behind it. So that's another bonus with this Molly, is that you can fight behind it like this and get kind of free kills on people who maybe won't expect you. Okay, so if you don't want to use your Molotov at the start of the round, you can save it for later in the round when you know that it's not a rush and you want to try to pick off people who might be in spots like this. I call this spot Zaiwu. You might have a different name for it, but this spot is very easy to clear with some very, very basic nades. So you see this last cube on the scaffolding here. You can just bounce a molly like this, and it'll land in Zaiwu, and anyone who's here will be flushed out and they'll have to fight or smoke and waste a smoke. If they waste a smoke, it's very good for you because, you know, that's a full 20% of the other team's smokes potentially wasted on really nothing. And you want to throw this molly after the yellow smoke has faded, since after the yellow smoke has faded, your teammate's out here, you know, it's the next logical progression for your teammate to help you fight here. If this gets mollied out by you and your teammate comes and fights, this is the freest kill ever for your teammate, right? The other player who's playing in Zaiwu is going to have a very hard time killing this, coming out of the molly, while he's just going to have a free kill on a lit guy. And just a reminder for this video, these are the bare basics on how you start every single round. So when you play games and you get better and you play against better opponents, they're going to have things that they do in contrast to what you're doing, right? So there's going to be a counter to your counter, to a counter, to a counter, to a counter, to a counter, you know, and eventually it'll stop, but this is how you grow as a player. You learn all these things, you learn all these options, and it's one of the reasons why someone like Zaiwu, when Zaiwu loads up Face It, he's dropping 45, 50 kills a game because he's seen all these counters and he knows how to counter them perfectly down to a very deep level. You know, a tier 1 professional team is going to have a counter 4 steps ahead, right? And not exactly, but you get what I'm saying, right? So once you start playing against better opponents, you're going to realize what those steps are and you're going to try to stay 1 step ahead every single time. Okay, so next is the side hall player. And as the side hall player, what you're mainly trying to do is not die to a rush because you are very vulnerable to the other team rushing you and kind of taking over the round immediately if you die. A lot of times in my games, you know, any Face It game, any matchmaking game, if I'm able to kill the side hall player at the very start of the round, 1, it means the side hall player is doing a bad job. 2, the round for me as a T is very easy. So as a side hall player, just remember, you don't want to die early. Okay, so how can we stop from dying early? So same thing as the other A player, you're going to want to run through elevator like this towards side hall, and as you're running here, unlike the elevator player, you can hear a lot of what's happening on the ramp. If the other team is rushing you super hard, you can hear it, right? If your sound is up at a normal volume. What I want you to do is be ready to throw counter nades. So if you hear a guy running in yellow, you can very easily nade and molly him and then hold for his push, right? Because he's rushing you. Or you can just molly at the start of the round. Basically, you don't want to die early, and this will stop the other team from rushing you, right? Even if the yellow smoke is up and they run through it, if there's a molly here, they're forced to fight you on, you know, tagged low HP, so you have a good chance of getting this kill. If you have an MP9 or an M4, it's a very easy kill for you to get. Okay, and since you still have your smoke as the side hall player, a lot of the times you can get away with re-smoking this area, you know, right in here. And when you re-smoke yellow in whatever way you do, what you're trying to do is maintain control over this position and these angles that are deep, right? You're trying to be able to not die to an op, but also get kills on people coming through here, right? So as the side hall player, I want you to try to get to 51 as many rounds as you can because it's such a strong spot. So if the other team throws a smoke that lands here, which is pretty common, I've done this so many times and it's extremely free. You can get a kill like this and jump back through the smoke and be totally safe. The other team is going to have a very hard time. You know, first they got to process that you're here. And then if a guy's here, he has to, you know, maybe choose to spam or try to run through. And by that time, you're already long gone. You're already here, right? So try to be a rat and play around these smokes and play around the yellow smoke and try to play in 51. It's very strong. You could kill anybody walking through the smoke like this. Get the jump on somebody who might not be expecting you here. And also you can hold all these little angles, right, and see things. One thing I saw Halzerg doing, I saw him, you know, holding an angle here, and it might be hard to see on YouTube, but let me get an op, right? You can see Zaiwu from here, right? So if a guy's just standing there, you can wallbang him from this position, right? Stuff like that. This player is kind of a rat player, and you want to be able to surprise your opponent and just get away with 1 kill and link back up with your A player later into the round. And this guide is focused on solo queue players or intermediate, beginner, and low advanced level players, low advanced elo level players. I'm going to talk about B in a way that I would play it in a face it pug, not necessarily against a team where I have lots of information or prep or something like that. I'm going to be talking about how you can play against a team of 5 randoms. So that being said, I'm going to talk about the B rotator, and the way I want you to start in your matchmaking games or face it games is to run here in mid, take out a molly, and throw it on the ground here. Okay, and what this molly does is if the other team tries to rush you, they're going to have to smoke this molly, which you'll hear, or they're going to tank a bunch of damage. So it's very easy for you to get a kill on somebody running through a molly, and if they smoke it, you have enough time to get away. And as the mid player, it's very common to throw your HE at the start of the round into bottom mid. The T will a lot of the times be, in this area. Maybe they might be back here, but if the other team likes to kind of walk on you here, you can throw nades at them. So I think this is the easiest way to throw the nade. There's 5 different ways. Actually, I'll show you all 3. So you come into this corner right here, anywhere really. You see this band. Hold your middle click, so left click is like this. Right click is like this, it's both at the same time, and then do a jump throw. And then if another player on the other team is playing here, they're going to take, this nade's going to hit them for full damage, so 49 with armor, and with pistols it might even one-shot them. Some other ways to do it are you get onto this thing right here, and you see this beam right here, and this nade's going to do something similar. You look at the grenade camera, it's going to land in a similar spot. And the other way to do it, which I don't see as much anymore, but you can still throw it, is you come into this corner right here. It doesn't really look like you can stand here, but you can, and you look for this knot in the wood. So I kind of think like there's like an arrow here pointing at this knot. You jump throw, and it'll do something similar. It'll get in this hole right here, and it'll destroy anyone who's standing in this position. Okay, so now that the start of the round is over, you'll probably be towards this general area, and what I want you to think as the B rotator is that you live for the B anchor. So you live to support the B anchor and, give him another person to play with and throw helpful utility for him to try to live as long as possible and get more kills. The easiest way to do that is to have your flash be ready. And so if you don't have grenade binds, you should definitely have them. It's kind of standard for basically everybody who isn't a beginner to have your nades on each key. So I would pull out my flash if my teammate needs it and be ready to throw it super fast. And what you want to do with your flash is throw it either in front of your teammate or behind him. You don't want to throw it in some random spot like this. You want to throw it to, if your teammate's already fighting, you can throw it in the back here. And if your teammate wants to peek for information, you can throw it in the front. So either way is super easy. You can just kind of wing it like that. You can just kind of wing them like this. This is always a good way to help your teammate, right? Because if your teammate is trying to fight people here, right? People are trying to peek him. You can flash behind him up here in this area, right? And so he doesn't have to turn or anything. You can flash and then come in with your gun and help fight. Or if your teammate wants to fight the ramp, to get info, maybe he's playing close here and he wants to get a flash to peek the stairs. You can just simply throw a flash like this, right? Like this. Or if you're in mid, you can just throw it like that. And this will catch a lot of people off guard because, they're playing in this area as T's coming up. This flash, like, you can't dodge it, right? There's no way for you to react to that flash and not be blinded. So you're forced to jump away or just, be in the open full blinded. And the last thing I like to do is the B rotator is if an execute is coming and you still have your smoke, you can right click a smoke like this and play with your gun out, because look at all the space that this smoke gives you to, play in unexpected positions like this, or, hold the smoke, right, if your teammate is like back in this area with you. This smoke allows you to come up close and, get the jump on people who are doing an execute, because it's very hard to, find somebody through the smoke and try to kill them. Once you start playing this role more, you'll start to find that there are some games where the other team likes to walk out at you in mid a lot, and there are some games where you don't see anybody come mid ever, right? Some games there'll be some players who really love to lurk mid, and you're the main line of defense to try to counter that. But if you don't see that in your games, what I want you to experiment with is not mollying mid. And when I talk about the op roll, I'll explain why. but basically you're trying to not give information every round as to, okay, he mollies mid every single round, right? If you're switching it up, the other team isn't going to know exactly how you're playing, but in a low-level intermediate game, this doesn't matter as much, so you don't have to really think about that. Okay, so B anchor is the position that I like to play the most in pugs, and mainly because a lot of the times the other team doesn't know how to play the map at the level that you think they might know how to play it. And so this is the role where it's very easy to win your team the round, not based on aim, but based on information. And the way that I want you to play is you want to try to be aggressive, but if the game doesn't warrant it, then you go back to playing standard. And what do I mean by that? So if the other team just does not like to play B, you notice that basically nobody comes here. Almost every round is towards A, which a lot of beginner games will end up being. Unless they're fully rushing you at B. And so what I want you to try to think about is how can I get and play angles like this that are down on the stairs. This is an incredibly strong angle because it's very hard for the T's to clear this because it's a 50-50 on whether somebody could be playing, you know, this rat angle here or playing here or playing down here. Right? It's very hard to not get a kill as a CT playing here. This is an extremely free kill. And you get a lot of multi-kills on people trying to re-peek you. You know, if there's two people here and you insta-kill the first one, the second guy you're going to have a good chance of killing too. So you want to try to get down on the stairs if you can, okay? And so the way you start at B is with any spawn, you come here and you want to know what the other team could do to you at the start of the round. Okay, this is where it's the most important. A lot of the times, T's will be throwing flashes like this that pop in the window, right? And so it's going to blind you if you're coming in this area. There's not really a good way to know when this flash is coming. So what you want to do is have your molly out, and if you think that the other team might be rushing you, throw the molly on the stairs, okay? Because what this does is it prevents the T's from having any way of coming up and fighting you, because this molly, they're going to take 90 damage if they try to run through it, right? They have to run through the whole length of it. So mollying on the stairs completely stops the rush, or at least makes them, you know, smoke it and have a really, really annoying time with their teammates coming through trying to, you know, figure out what's happening, okay? And it gives you time to get away. So this counters the rush, and you can throw nades on the run back. You throw this molly, right? But the thing is that a lot of the times you're going to end up throwing a molly like this and nothing is going to happen. So that means that the other team is playing more reserved. Maybe there's only one person, or maybe there's two people sitting behind a smoke. So it's very common once you start getting into higher level games that people throw smoke like this. And what this smoke does is it obscures information if you're just a single player, right? It's very hard to walk down these steps and avoid people holding over them, right, like this as a T. And so it's really easy for the T to get a kill like this, right? So if you're alone, this smoke is going to be annoying for you to play against. But what I want you to realize is that most of the time this smoke is going to be thrown to feign that there's more than one person trying to come at you. So I don't want you to be super scared of it. Just expect it to happen in the rounds. Okay, but that's great and all, but if you've ever played Counter-Strike before, you know that none of the rounds go as planned, and you have to have a backup plan as this player if you're going to end up playing aggressively like I'm describing. So the way that I want you to play is at default most of the time, especially if your teammate doesn't know how to play mid, because this is a position where you can get away if you fight properly or live for a very long time. You can get a kill here, tuck, you know, maybe try to go for another kill, or just live, because there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. It's very common for the other team to throw basic mollies like this at you, right? And so since you still have your smoke, if you smoke this molly, look at how much space you're given now to play around, right? You can play an angle like this that's completely, you know, this is a fake angle. No, this isn't a spot that anyone's playing in, so you can get free surprise kills, hide in the smoke, right? You can hide. It's hard to see when I'm in the smoke, but I'm hiding like right there. You know, it's very hard for the other team to spray you down and kill you in the smoke, so you're trying to live as long as possible. And if your teammates are good, or you trust them to throw a flash in front of you, you can play angles like quad or white, because if you're white and your teammate throws a flash that lands in front of you and you peek, if people are on the stairs and they're blinded, it's about a second for them to get away, and that's enough time for you to get a kill on somebody who's full blinded right in the open for you, they're in the open. For them, they're not really in the open, but since you're white and they're full blind, then they're in the open for your peek, right? You're able to peek like this, get a lot of kills. Okay, so you can play Vertigo with 5 rifles. Famously, Zywoo does this. He does not op on this map for whatever reason. He chooses to always rifle on CT Vertigo, which is a quirk that I think is explained by the fact that you can play all these spots without having an op. There's not that many super long range angles like there are on a map like Overpass or when Dust 2 is still in the pool. Dust 2 is a huge op map. Mirage, you need an opper. Nuke, you need an opper, right? You can't only play with 5 rifles on Nuke. So I'm going to talk about retakes and I'm going to talk about the op after that because you can play again without an op. Okay, for this guide I'm not going to go too in depth about the nades that you want to throw on retakes, but on B you want to be able to remember that this pillar and nades go hand in hand. So you left click a Molotov and look at that. It covers almost the entire site, right? Especially the place where most people plant at default. So if you're the elevator player or you're an A player on a good timing, or you still have your molly as the B rotator, you can just left click a molly at this pole. You don't have to walk, you can just left click. You know, you don't even have to try for these lineups, right? You just left click at it and it will always land perfectly. So I want you to throw these nades a ton. You should see these nades happen a lot on B-side retakes. And then the other nade I want you to learn is if you are coming from A or you're an elevator, you just come into this corner, and I call this the gen flash. You see this sandbag, you imagine that's a cube, you aim right at the corner. And what this flash does is it might look like it's going to blind the shit out of your teammates, right? But imagine your teammate just lived at B, and he's playing right here. And the other team is playing and looking at all these angles to see if somebody's peeking. They have to be looking in this area where the flash pops, right? It's not a perfect god flash, but it's going to blind basically everybody who's in the open. It's not going to blind somebody who's tucked, obviously, if they're tucked like this. But anyone who's in the open is going to get destroyed by this flash. So the way you call this is you say that you're flashing in front, right? And your teammates go play the retake off of that because they're right here, boom, they explode off that flash. Okay, this is a super important flash. Combined with this molly, it's going to get you a lot of free rounds retaking B. And then at A, the idea that you want to remember is that most people plant in this spot right here, right? So since this spot is super exposed to side hall and to ramp and sandbags, you want to try to get a smoke on this spot by any means necessary, okay? So very simply, you can just throw a smoke that bounces off of this beam right here, and it'll always land on top of the bomb. Or if you want to learn a safe lineup, come into this corner. I look for this beam, the red beam, the first one I can see, and just right in the middle left click throw. This one's going to take a bit longer, but it's going to land in the exact same spot. You know, maybe elevator is smoked and your whole team is kind of flushed out of the site and they're playing back here. You're usually safe in heaven, so you can throw this smoke like that, and it'll take a few seconds, but it'll get there, right? And it's better than not having it, obviously. And then the last thing is that I want you to use this window to your advantage. So you can just left click flashes through the window like this, and be careful not to aim too high because they might bounce off the roof like that. So you just kind of aim in here, right? And what this allows is, this is similar to the B flash, right? Where if the other team is looking at the site, they're going to be totally destroyed by this flash. There's nothing they can really do to dodge it, so they're going to have to, you know, fall off, and it gives your team space to swing through. So the flash comes over, and you can even swing with your own flash. You can wide swing out like this and gain some space right on the other team. Okay, so the last thing to talk about is opping. And on this map, what I want you to remember is that a lot of the times your teammates are going to be receptive of you taking their spot temporarily for the round when you have the op. Because there's so many positions that you can surprise the other team by having the op there instead of having a rifle. So you can do it at A on the crane side, you can do it at the side hall side, you can do it in mid, you can be the elevator player, and you could be the B player. So as the opper, on this map, it's really important to understand how you would play it with a rifle and then shift it slightly to play it with the op. Okay, so I'm not going to go too in depth as to how to do that on each spot, but I'm just going to show you a few things. So this will be kind of like a lightning round. So as the A player, you can still go for this peak at the start of the round and hold yellow, and then you can hold from this angle right here later in the round, because a lot of the times people are going to jump up and you're going to get a free kill on somebody jumping up yellow late into the round, right? It's hard for them to clear this angle properly unless they come and do it from here, right? It's going to be hard for them to not die to your op here. And then in side hall, if the yellow smoke is coming out, same principles. You want to deny a rush early, right? And then if you think you can, get out to here and hold an angle like this. And when the yellow smoke fades, you can hold like this, or just hold down this sight line completely. If you don't want to push, you can play it from here. And again, this is going to surprise people that it's going to be hard to clear an op here unless they have a perfect flash, right? You're still able to get a shot off and live. If you want to go mid, you don't have to molly at the start. It's not a bad idea if your teammate does it every single round, but you can post on this angle here early. And what's going to happen if the other team likes to walk out mid, you're going to have a very easy kill on this guy because he might not be expecting an op to be posted here. He's going to think that it's a rifler, right? So you can get a free kill on somebody, you know, who likes to walk out mid every single round by just holding this angle and killing them. And in that sort of round, you have become the B rotator, so it can be kind of an awkward spot to play if your teammates aren't very good at rotating. Just remember that you're going to have to throw flashes for your B player if the other team comes B. And then if you have this furthest spawn that's closest to B site, you can always go for the B pick. So you run like this, you try to dodge a flash, and then you post on this angle right here. And with how the other team spawns have been shifted, I think the closest spawn is like right here or something insane. If the other team, you think they might have an op, this is a very scary peak to go for because a lot of the times a T will beat you to this angle. So just going for this peak in general, I'd say only do it against the team that doesn't like to buy the op on force buys, or if you're feeling ballsy, just going to try to peek that guy once and fall off, right? If you might have an op. Okay, so that's all I have for the basics on Vertigo. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really like making them, so if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And again, if this video hits 100 likes, I'm going to make a tutorial on Anubis CT next. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Peace.